The diabolical superhero drama is upon us again as The Boys Season 4 is all set for a grand release. Over the years, this has been one of the most popular and also the most controversial superhero adaptations, and everything from the shock factor to the relentless violence has been appreciated by the fans. The Amazon show has been adapted from Dynamite Entertainment's The Boys graphic novel series, but there are several crucial bits from the comic books that have been left out. In this video, we'll look into one such gruesome detail when Billy Butcher knocked a young Supe in the final volume of the Boys comic series. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who was Billy Butcher, and how did he transform into a vicious superhero killer? We can't possibly begin a detailed discussion on The Boys without a proper introduction of the infamous Billy Butcher, one of the two main protagonists in the narrative alongside Huey Campbell. For those who are not familiar with The Boys, Billy Butcher is the leader of the CIA-backed team of vigilantes who take down notorious superheroes. He was born in the United Kingdom, and courtesy of an abusive father, he had a rather dysfunctional childhood. Over time, he developed the aggressive traits of his father, and finally, he ran away from home and joined the British Royal Marines. During his absence, his brother Lenny was unable to cope with their father's abuse and committed suicide, an event that left a deep impact on Butcher. So Billy Butcher was already a hardened fellow trained in combat, but there was yet another crucial episode in his life that turned him into an unforgiving superhero killer. After the death of his brother, Billy immigrated to America and encountered a woman named Rebecca Saunders, aka Becky. He fell in love with her and they got married. This wonderful woman happened to be the senior director of digital marketing at Vought International, the sinister organization that dealt with the superheroes. During one of the Christmas parties at Vought Tower, Becky was invited and Butcher came along with her. This is where he met Homelander for the very first time. From here on, Butcher's life started getting more and more twisted because the love of his life suffered a great tragedy at the hands of Homelander. A few days after the Christmas party, she was raped by Homelander in a private room, and she became pregnant with his child. She went to Vought to figure out how to deal with the situation, and she was helped under the condition that she would completely disappear from the public eye and would be presumed dead. She couldn't even inform her husband about this, but Butcher could tell that something was seriously wrong with her. In fact, for some time following her disappearance, Butcher actually believed that she committed suicide. Later, Grace Mallory showed him footage that confirmed that Homelander had indeed raped his wife. Clearly, this twisted superhero was responsible for her disappearance, and this ignited the first flames of hate for superheroes in Butcher. He joined Grace Mallory's team to get revenge on Homelander and was also determined to ruin Vought, the corrupt organization. Slowly, people like Frenchie and Mother's Milk joined the team, and much later, people like Huey also became a part of the superhero killing task force. His wife Becky is actually the major inspiration for Butcher to kill every last one of the superheroes, and this is what makes him the deadliest enemy of Homelander throughout the narrative. On this note, we'll take you to one of his most graphic and violent attacks on a superhero, which took place during a time when Huey hadn't joined the Boys yet. How does the comic series set up one of the most violent acts of The Boys? Created by Garth Ennis, this miniseries titled Dear Becky is the 13th and final volume of The Boys comic book series. The narrative is premised in a world where the entire superhero threat has been dealt with. As the prologue in the first issue of the comic series states, it's been 12 years since the decisive and climactic moments of The Boys series. The story starts off in a Scottish town, which also happens to be Huey's hometown. It's soon revealed that Huey and Annie are still together, and they are both staying in the house of Huey's deceased parents. The first sequence takes you inside a pub, where Huey can be seen chilling with his transgender friend Bobby. Previously, Bobby had appeared in Volume 8 of The Boys, and currently, Bobby is giving Huey a tough time and pulling his leg in friendly banter. Huey heads to grab a couple more drinks, and the bartender is the foul-mouthed Mr. Holmes, aka Beezer, who has the choicest words for Huey and his friend. However, Huey doesn't take him too seriously, and he's soon back to have a prolonged discussion with Bobby. Huey talks about the excessive woke sentiments that irritate him, phony Twitter warriors, and a few other social issues that annoy him to no end. What's a friend if you can't rant out to that person? The discussion soon takes a serious turn when Bobby asks Huey if he plans to have kids with Annie in the near future. Huey replies that Annie cannot have kids, and more importantly, he's not particularly proud of how the world has turned into a messy place, and he strongly believes that things are only going to get worse. Thus, he doesn't have any plans for kids, and his partner Annie also shares his sentiments because of her troubled upbringing. Besides, Annie has also watched for herself how rotten the world has gotten. There's also a quick throwback to the main events of The Boys when Huey remarks how he's glad that the superhero apocalypse didn't take place over a decade ago. The superheroes were stopped from taking over Pentagon, and it could have been a very different world had they not been stopped in time. That being said, Huey and his friend are obviously disappointed at how things turned out nonetheless. Their socio-political discussion continues as they talk about global situations, and they move from the bar to the beach. Sadly, even the world without all the superheroes could not prosper and progress like they would have wanted to. Things are probably still better than the apocalyptic situation if the superheroes took over, but Huey talks about how he's glad that his parents are not there to witness the horrors of the present-day world because it would have broken their hearts. The talk between Huey and Bobby also reveals that Huey is apparently in Scotland to sell his parents' house, and he's there with Annie temporarily. Also, he talks about how he lives on the pension of his past work, and he doesn't really do anything as of now. This brief introduction is not as eventful as we've seen the Boys comic book series to be, but it certainly offers Garth Ennis the opportunity to discuss and put forward his social and political views. However, the story quickly moves in motion as Huey gets a text from Annie saying that a mysterious parcel has arrived for Huey in the mail. How did Billy Butcher destroy the Boys' version of Billy Batson, aka Shazam? Exploring the detailed comic book narrative. When Huey finally gets home, the first thing he does is look through the package that came for him. It turns out to be a diary, and Huey takes it to the bathroom to read, and he soon realizes that the diary belongs to Becky, the wife of Billy Butcher, who is long dead. Huey gets a shock when he discovers that Butcher has actually written a lot of footnotes and additions to this diary, and his commentary seems to be a constant feature in this diary. Huey is hit hard by PTSD as several traumatic memories of his past interactions with Billy Butcher probably flood his mind. He cowers down on the bathroom floor briefly, but he eventually masters enough strength to pick up the book once again and continues reading. It seems like Butcher has used the diary as a medium to communicate his feelings with his wife, and he starts off by saying how much he loves Becky. Then comes the real revelation, and Butcher writes about one of the most violent and heinous operations conducted by the Boys. The team comprised of Frenchie, the female, Greg Mallory, and Mother's Milk, and of course, Butcher was in the mix of things as their unofficial leader. Together, they tracked and hunted down a rogue superhero who appeared to be no more than a 10-year-old boy. They all pinned him down, and the female grabbed his tongue as Butcher quickly cut it off cleanly and left him bleeding in pain. The entire floor was covered with his blood, and the boys nonchalantly washed their hands after the job was done. The boy was in a lot of pain, but he was also furious about what was done to him. He kept making a sound, Thiathem, Thiathem, and clearly this was a nod to the popular DC superhero Shazam. Now, it becomes clear why the boys had to chop off his tongue. If they failed to do so in time, the little boy would have uttered the magical words and turned himself into a powerful superhero. Currently, without his tongue, he could no longer say the word, and he looked at the boys with such fury that Butcher felt good about the work that they did. The female landed a powerful punch to silence the boy, and the Butcher stood there thinking about his actions. However, there was also a small part of him that felt bad because ultimately they had mutilated a 10-year-old boy, no matter the cause. Of course, Butcher couldn't admit his subconscious feelings of guilt to the rest of the team, but the diary was his safe place to note down his troubled thoughts. Butcher also admitted in the diary that the reason behind his remorse is actually his late wife Becky, who continued to impact his decisions and actions even during her absence. Butcher wrote about his deepest feelings in the diary, and he was clear in his mind that he could not let the soft side of Becky overpower him. The situation with the superheroes was only going to get worse, and he couldn't have empathy and compassion weakening him. He even made a solemn resolve that Becky would have to die, which was a metaphorical take on how the ideas of love and peace from his late wife would have to disappear in the violent world that they were about to encounter soon. Marvelous verdict. Not a memorable comic series, but an unforgettable moment. Dear Becky is probably not the finest hour of the boys' comic series, and there are plenty of better storylines in the previous volumes. That being said, this volume adds the much-needed human touch to the characters. Even someone as brutal and ruthless as Billy Butcher has been humanized, and we get to witness his internal struggles. Clearly, even he was vulnerable as he indulged in all the unthinkable violence, and the diary finding its way to Huey only completes the cycle. Everyone who's familiar with the comic books is aware how Huey had to kill Billy Butcher after he went insane with his superhero-killing goals, and it's a traumatizing moment for Huey to relive the most intimate thoughts and feelings of this complicated man. The Shazam parody superhero slaughter is easily one of the most disturbing moments in this volume of The Boys, and it's a scene that is certainly not leaving our heads anytime soon. We'd love to hear your opinion on this horrifying sequence from the comic series, and also tell us if you think that this narrative can be part of the upcoming The Boys Season 4. What other notable comic book events do you think will be part of the TV series? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.